All right, Jose. Good morning, everyone. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share. To thank our TAMLUD TORAH sponsor for the month of Iyar, anonymous sponsorship with Hakaras Hatov to Hashem for all of the blessing He has bestowed upon us, and for Shleima, for Devorah Leah, Bas Chaya Rivka. May we all be zoche Hashem to witness the imminent coming of mashiach Yameinu. Amen. Our week of learning sponsor, Shmuel Robyn Korobkin, in commemoration of Shmuel's father's yahrzeit, Leonard Korobkin, Lipa ben Yechezkel HaKohen, we hope that the merit of our TAMLUD TORAH, the neshama will have an aliyah, and the family ain't no chama. So with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Pei 85. But we have a lot of work to do in Meretz Hashem. We are picking up on Pei Daled Amud Beis. A second there. We are picking up Pei Daled Amud Beis. Yeah, no, not that bad. I did turn the page. Pei Daled Amud Beis 84b, and we are picking up in the wide lines. 4 lines in. 4 lines in. So the Gemara says, remember, we're actually about 5 lines in. The Gemara says, So remember, again, we're picking up in the middle of the story, or it's really towards the end of the story, of Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shmuel Silber. So remember, Rabbi Lazar had taken on the position as an enforcer, an officer of the king. And again, the entire story where the guy was arrested, the guy was executed. Rabbi Lazar felt bad, and then it turned out that Rabbi Lazar was correct, but he still had this tremendous feeling of guilt. As a result, he invited suffering upon him every single night. His wife heard about this. The suffering itself was a tremendous financial drain on the family, and so she left. That's where we left off in yesterday's daf. So the Gemara says as follows: Imr da azla beis avia salika va'azu hanach shisin sapunai aylilei ashisin avdi. So after she left, a miracle occurred, and what happened at Rabbi Lazar's house? So 60 sailors. By 60 sailors bringing 60 avodim. Also, if you notice, by the way, the common number in this entire story is 60. Everything is 60. That leads the Maharsha to say, obviously it's hyperbolic. It's coming to say a lot. Showed up at his house. Kina kiti shisin arniki va'avdulei shisin mine lapta va'achalu. And what happened? They showed up with 60 bags of money, or 60 chests, of money. Made him 60 types of lifta was this food, was this dish that was made out of dates that was helpful to healing his condition. Fine. And I will say, so therefore again, his wife left, but again, he was not left bereft, without help, without money. All of these miraculous money, this miraculous help showed up right afterwards. One day, Mrs. Rabbi Lazar said to their daughter, go and check in on your father. So the Gemara says, but my ka'avit ha'idna, see what's happening with him. Asya amar la zili amar li'imech shalanu gadol mishalahem. So the daughter showed up, and Rabbi Lazar told his daughter, go back and tell your mother everything is fine. The mother was all worried that they had used up all the wealth of her father's home. So Rabbi Lazar said, now miraculously we have more wealth than they do. Karya Nafshe, he said about himself, Haisa kani asocher mimerchak tavi lachma. That literally again she was like ani asocher, the merchants, vessels of merchants, mimerchak tavi lachma, who bring their bread or bring their bounty from far away. A reference to the miracle that these people showed up out of nowhere to be able to provide for Rabbi Lazar and his household. Achol v'shasi ubari. So I'll say, Sabar Hashem, Rabbi Lazar was healed. He was healed, he ate, he drank, he became healthy again. Nafik lebei midrasha. So he went out to the base medrash. Aisu lekamei shisin mine dama. So they brought before him. So we can remember, Rabbi Lazar was one of the ranking Gedolei Hadar. So he comes back to the base medrash, and what do they have? Hilchos nida. So again, remember, sometimes a woman could have staining, or a woman could have a discharge, and the shaila is it dam nida? Right? Is it menstrual blood? Is it something else? So Rabbi Lazar came to the base medrash, and there was, once again I will say, 60 shilas, right? 60 shilas, 60 different types of blood that he had to decide if they were dam nida, if they weren't dam nida. Menstrual blood, not menstrual blood. The Gemara says, Tarinu. he held, right, he paskined that they were all tahar. They were all tahar, meaning they were not menstrual blood. And therefore, in all of these situations, therefore, Allah said these women were permitted to their husbands. So the Gemara says, Havu kamarani rabbana ba'amri, sagadait chalei, b'chad salka daitachlei, b'hu, chad sofek. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Lazar says his colleagues were a little bit bewildered. They said, really, out of 60 shilas, there's not one thing that's tamei. Everything here is tahar. So the Gemara says, Im kamosihu, Rabbi Lazar says, if I'm right, you kulam zcharim. Then each and every one of these women who are asking these shilas should become pregnant and should have a boy. Ve'im lav, tehina keva achas benem. And if I'm wrong, it should be one girl out of the 60. So the Gemara says, hayu kulam zcharim. So he'll say, amazingly enough, from every single one of these shilas, ultimately again, women who were taoros, became pregnant and gave birth to boys. Vasikaluhu Rebbe Lazar al Shmei. And each of these women named their sons Rebbe Lazar for Hakaras Hatov that he passed in his shilas. So it says, first of all, how beautiful it is. Can you imagine all of these Alazars running around? What's also interesting about this Gemara is this seems to be a proof to the custom of naming after living people. So it's interesting. One of the major distinctions between Sfardim and Ashkenazim is Ashkenazim do not name after living people. Sfardim do. So I just want to point out over here how interesting this is, that you have all of these people naming their kids after a living sage, naming their kids after Rabbi Lazar. Very interesting. Tanya, Amar Rebbe, Kama Prev Rebbe Bitla, Risha Zumi Yisrael. Rebbe says, how much procreation this terrible monarchy. So also remember again, generally this is whenever you see Malchus or Risha, it's usually a reference to the Romans. So the idea of here, what does the Gemara mean that the Romans were mevatel so much procreation? See, the Romans had conscripted Rabbi Lazar into their service. Had Rabbi Lazar been more readily available in the Beis Medrash, he could have paskin on these shilas real time and hopefully allowed for the proliferation of children. But because he was not always available in the Beis Medrash, because he was conscripted into the service of the king, as a result, unfortunately, there was some level of negation of Perivya procreation. Incredible. So the Gemara will say, this story gets incredible over here. The Gemara says, Kihava necha nafshe. So now Rabbi Lazar is about to die. So we've seen, by the way, the only major chapter of Rabbi Lazar's life that is not included in this Gemara is, of course, the entire time that he's in the cave with his father, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yochai. Just want to point out, so there is a major chapter of his life that is not covered by this Gemara, but okay. So, Kihava Kanecha Nafshe, when Rabbi Lazar was about to die, Amar la Ledvisu Yadana b'Dirabanan Dirasichi Aloi V'lo Ma'aski Bi Shapir. So this is pretty incredible. Rabbi Lazar says, I'm about to die, and I know that the rabbis are angry at me. Now, Rabbi says, goes back to yesterday's daf. Why the Rabbanim are angry at Rabbi Lazar? Why? Because Lamaisa, he agreed to go ahead and work for the king and hand over Jewish criminals. Now, again, 2 points of clarification over there. Number one, he didn't agree to anything. He was conscripted, right? Kraina de Igarta lehavi Parvanka, right? So again, they said, you came up with the idea, right? Because remember, he devised the whole strategy to see who's a thief, who's not a thief, so you have to come work for us. So they were upset with him. So he was afraid that when he died, they would not provide him with a proper burial. So what did he say? Ogni bali yisai, velo tid chalin minoi. So he says to his wife, keep my body in the attic. Don't bury me, but don't be afraid. Nothing's going to happen. Now I will say, now remember again, now obviously Rabbi Lazar is saying, keep my body in the attic, and he wasn't afraid of decomposition. Why wasn't he afraid of decomposition? Yesterday's Gemara, right? Remember again his liposuction, where he took out all the fat didn't decompose. He felt that at the end of the day, he had led enough of a meritorious life that his body would not decompose. So his plan was, keep me in the attic until there's a time that maybe they'll give me a proper burial. Okay, so what happens? Amr Shlomo Nachmani, Ishtoi Rabbi Yona's son. So listen to this. So Shlomo Nachmani said, the mother of Rabbi Yona's son told me, that the wife of Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, spoke to her, and he told her the following. Lo pachos mitam nisari, v'lo tfei me'esrin utrein shanin, ugnusei ba'aliyasa. So that the wife of Rabbi Lazar said, for no less than 18 years and no more than 22 years was my husband's body in the attic. So that's how long Rabbi Lazar remained unburied. Kiavasalikna menya. So when Rabbi Lazar's wife would go up to the attic, so Rabbi Lazar, he passes away. He's in the attic. His body's in the attic. So when she would go up, she would look at her husband's hair. In other words, she was overwhelmed by this idea that his body was not decomposing. Whenever a hair would come out of his head, ultimately again there'd be a little droplet of blood. The idea being able to say that not only did the body not decompose, but apparently, I don't know what the right word is, it was fully intact to the point that almost like it was whole. It was whole, almost like, I don't want to use the word like fresh because that sounds very strange, right? But I guess the story is strange, right? But Lamaisa, the idea was there was no decomposition. Yom Echad chazai richsha the kanafik me'onye. One day she saw a worm coming out of his ear, and she thought, okay, this is the beginning of the decomposition. Chalash datai. Ultimately, she became very distressed. Now, what is she going to do? Ischazi Lipa chamash. He appeared. So Elazar appeared to his wife in a dream. Amar li lo midihu. Don't worry about this. I'll tell you exactly why this is happening. Yom achad shamai bezilusa de Torah mirabanan v'lo machoi kidibayeli. Let's say it's incredible. Why is the worm coming out of my ear? It's a punishment. One day, I heard someone speaking disparagingly about a Talmud Chacham, and I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything about it. So because I heard Lashon Hara, not just Stam Lashon Hara, but Lashon Hara about a Talmud Chacham, about a Torah scholar, and I didn't do anything about it, as a result, the worm is coming out of my ear. Ki asa beitrei ledina havukami abava. Boss said, this is incredible. So apparently, see, here's what's interesting. Apparently, this was not like the best kept secret that Rabbi Lazar is in the attic, right? So the Gemara says, so what happens? So sometimes when two people were having a machlokas, they would come, havakaimi abava. They would stand at the entranceway to the home. Amar mar milsei, Amar mar milsei. So also each side would present their case, and what would happen? Nafik kalam eliyasa va'amar ish ploni ata chayiv, ish ploni ata zakai. Wild. Right? And a voice would come out from the attic. A voice would come out from the attic saying, this one is chayiv, and this one is innocent, right? This one is liable, this one is innocent. They both say, just by the way, even on a metaphorical level, part of the beauty of living a life that is steeped in Torah, is that in Eretz Hashem, your Torah continues after you're gone, right? In general, one of the things that we want to know deep down is that even when I die, there's a piece of me that's going to be perpetuated. Like Rav Shamshon Hirsch brings down, he says, what man wants most in this world is the one thing he can never have, which is immortality. So that's why he says, for example, we want to have children. Why do we want to have children? Because again, children provide us a small measure of immortality. What children means is that hopefully once I'm gone, that there's a piece of me that lives on. And I will say, but the truth is, immortality is also achieved through spirituality. When I stand for something spiritual, right? When I represent something spiritual, or I endow my home with certain spiritual qualities, though my children will speak about those things, my grandchildren will speak about those things, and those are the things that live on even after I'm gone, right? Which sports team you liked, as much as that's nice, in 2 generations, no one's going to care about that, and no one's probably even going to talk about it. Right? And what you did for a living or didn't do for a living, the truth is, okay, grandchildren are going to remember that. They're going to know what you did or how much money you made or whatever else. Those are not the things that are going to live on. But the Torah you represent, the spiritual ideals, right? The divrei Torah you give over, the tenets you constantly give over and reinforce within your home, those are the things that in Eretz Hashem will be spoken about for generations. So this profound idea over here that even after Rabbi Lazar was dead, right, his Torah would live on. Now again, whether you want to take this story literally or don't take this story literally, the idea being that he's dead, right? He's dead. Yet his Torah, his Piskei Halacha, what he stood for in a spiritual sense, That continues on and on and on. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Yom Echad, Havi Kaminsne Devisu Bahadi Shivsa. We'll say, so one day, Rabbi Elazar's wife got into a fight with a neighbor. So Amar La Tehei Kibayla Shlo Nitin Lekvura. All right, so pretty intense. So the neighbor got upset with Mrs. Rabbi Elazar, and she says to her, you should be just like your husband, who was never given over to burial. Okay, so Rabbi says, so now at this point, Amri Rabbanan, Kulehai Vadelav Orach Ara. So Rabbi says, so now here was the issue. So apparently, people knew about this, but it wasn't really spoken about. In other words, that Rabbi Elazar wasn't buried and was in the attic. So now the problem is, once already when people are getting into fights, that this becomes, you should be like your husband who wasn't given over to burial, the Rabbanan say, okay, now there's a Chil Hashem. Right? The Chil Hashem being that if everybody knows that Rabbi Elazar, who was one of the great Talmidei Chachamim, ultimately, again, is not buried, so there's an element of Chil Hashem. So now we have to remedy the situation. So Amri Rabbanan, Kuli Hadke, Ika Da'amri, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, is Chazoi Lehu B'chalma, Amar Lehu, the other version of the story is Rabbi Shmuel Robyn Korobkin appeared to some of the Rabbanim in a dream, and he said, literally again, I have one jewel, I have one precious treasure. Preda literally means like an animal, right? I have one little offspring, and you don't bring him to me. So Rabbi Shmuel Robyn Korobkin appeared to the Rabbanon and said to the Rabbanon, you need to bury my son. Okay, so what happened? Azul Rabbanon la suke bay. Lo shavku b'nei achbaria d'chol shani d'havinayin Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Bal Yusei lo salik chaya ra'a l'masayu. So the Rabbanim decided, whoever the Rabbanim are, the Rabbanim decided that they have to go and bury Rabbi Elazar. So what was the problem now? The problem is the people of Achbaria. That was the name of a city. They would not allow the Rabbanim to take the body of Rabbi Elazar. Why not? Because apparently they felt that the body of Rabbi Elazar, having Rabbi Elazar there, was very helpful to them, quite literally in keeping wild animals away. There were no incidents with wild animals, so they would not let the Rabbanim take the body. This is incredible. So the Gemara says, Yom Achad, Mali Yomi Gidiki Puri Havi, Havutri Yishad Rabbanan Lebnei Biri. So what happened? One day it was Erev Yom Kippur. In Erev Yom Kippur, everybody's busy. So the Rabbanan sent a message to the people of Biri, Vaskul la'arisa, Vamtiu l'ma'arachta davua. So what says l'ma'arasa davua. So what happens? The Rabbanan sent word to the people of Biri, go ahead, get the body, and bring it to the burial cave in Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. I both say, now understand. Again, it's all really incredible. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is buried in Meron. Right? So there's the burial cave. I will say, remember again, so last yahrzeit Kala, we went to the cave of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Right? The official tomb, right? You enter in on top, but generally you can't get to the burial cave. The burial cave is down below, right? You walk down the hill, and the burial cave is a very small area. That's the actual cave of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. I just also want to point out how overwhelmingly beautiful it is that we're learning this Gemara. The government just announced yesterday that they are not allowing people into Meron this year because of the rocket attacks from Hezbollah. So we'll say, which in and of itself is like, in the grand scheme of all of the things that Klal Yisrael is dealing with, but the idea that no one's going to be by Rashbi. I don't know if no one, but I'm saying they're not allowing the normal gathering in Meron by Rashbi. So I will say, it behooves us that if no one's going to be with Rashbi, that I will say at least we have the schos Baruch Hashem to be by the kever right now. Right? When you learn something, the same way that when we say karbanos, Uneshama parim sfasenu, it's as if we are literally offering up karbanos. So when we're talking about the kever of Rashbi, there's a certain element that we have the opportunity to be there as well. So again, nothing's coincidence. They made this announcement yesterday. We're learning this Gemara today. So we should just have kavanah. As much as Rashbi is not going to have his children physically with him, but spiritually, nothing could ever disconnect us from Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. So they brought Rabbi Elazar to the burial cave. Ashkechu la'achna v'hadru lo l'ma'arta. So they saw there was this large snake. This large serpent that was at the entranceway of the Ma'ara, that would not allow anyone into the burial cave. They said, serpent, open up your mouth. Open up your mouth. I will say the idea the Maharsha brings down over here. What do you mean, open up your mouth? The snake was coiled around by the entrance to the point that the tail of the snake was in its mouth. So it was coiled around, not allowing anyone. And by the way, the Maharsha says, why was it that there was a serpent at the entranceway to the cave? The Maharsha says something beautiful. To show, it was a symbol, to show that the only reason Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yochai left this world was because of the sin of Adam and Chava, the snake representing the first sin, right? The Eitz Das Tovra, the Nachash. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yochai did not have any other averos. Isn't that incredible? Or at least, when we say he didn't have any averos, I don't think it means that he didn't commit any averos. But what it means is, he did tshuva. Anything he did tshuva for. So when he left this world, so to speak, the only thing on his spiritual account, ultimately, again, was the sin, the first sin of Adam and Chava. So represented by the Nachash, by the serpent at the entranceway. So they say, serpent, achna, achna. Pasach picha, open up your mouth. Piski picha, v'ikanes ben eitzel aviv. Pasach lehu. The serpent opened his mouth. It's incredible. So we'll say, okay, so that we'll say this marks the end of the story of Rebbe Lazar. Right, so now this is Rebbe Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yochai, an overwhelming and incredible. We'll say this is just, I just want to point out also, just so you know, we learn Gemara Baruch Hashem every single day, and Gemara, what is Gemara? Gemara is all opinions of different Tanaim, Amoraim. Just so you know, everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. One of the great things that we lose out, not that we lose out, but that we don't do enough of in Shas, is learning the stories of the people who we are learning about. So every once in a while, the Gemara gives you a window into a great person. Obviously, Rabbi Shimon is a different kind of person, but just know, right? Not everybody has a story like this, right? But everybody has a story. Let's go back. The Gemara says, Shalach Rebbe ledaber be'ishta. So we'll say this is fascinating. So now, Rabbi Lazar passed away. Rebbe, we'll say Rebbe, just so you understand again the personalities of this. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rebbe sends a message to the widow, to Rabbi Lazar's wife, to his widow. So to speak with her. Now, boss, what does it mean to speak with her? This is a marriage proposal. She's a widow. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was a widower. So he sends a marriage proposal to her. So the Rashi says, so the Gemara says, so she sends back to him, literally, again, a utensil that was used for holiness should be used for something profane, for something mundane, which is a pretty hard no. Right? She's like, I mean, thank you, I'm honored, but you know who my husband was, right? Like, my husband was Rebbe Lazar. Like, he was Rebbe Lazar. You're great and everything, but Lamaisa, I don't think it's a good idea. So the Gemara says, Taman Amrin, others say, Ba'asar de Mari Beisa Tala Zaine, Kul Baraya Kul Satala, or others say she said something else, right? In the place where the master of the house literally, again, would hang up his bow. The shepherd should hang up his bag, his backpack. The idea that she was saying was, you're not my husband. You're not my husband. In other words, right? In other words, I was married to Belazar. I don't think you understand who he was and who you are. So the Gemara says, Shalach la. So he responds to her, not to be deterred. Right? So it's true. Your husband Belazar was definitely a much greater Talmud Chacham. But in terms of Maisim Tovim, good deeds, was he that much greater than me? Now, boss, I have to understand something. It's like, if there's one person in the world who knows the true individual, it's the wife, right? Remember again, when we go into the world, we're all good at putting on a face, an identity, right? But my wife sees me, right, for who I really am, right? For good and for bad. So it's interesting over here that now Rebbe says back to Mrs. Rebbe Lazar, I understand your husband was definitely a greater Talmud Chacham than I was. But in Maisim Tovim, good deeds. I think Rebbe says, I think that I'm just as great, maybe if not greater. So the Gemara listen to this. Sholchale, she sent back to him, Torah miha gadol mimcha lo yedana. So the truth is, so Mr. Rebbe Lazar says, to be honest, I don't know who's a greater Talmud Chacham. You are my husband, right? I'm not in the base medrash. That I don't know. However, again, but here's what I know. I know that my husband was an incredibly great man in Maisim. Why? Because he willingly accepted suffering upon himself. So we'll say this goes back to the beginning of the oven. Now, amazing. Now, remember again, she got upset at him, and ultimately, again, she left, but obviously she came back. So she was saying a person who willingly accepts suffering upon himself as a form of atonement, that's an overwhelming person with Maisim Tovim. Okay, so the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, "B'Torah Maihi." So we'll say, what about Torah? What about Torah? Who was greater in Torah? Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha Asaf Saleh. So we'll say this: Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha would be sitting on the benches in the base medrash. Yasvi Kamayo Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Aara. So we'll say, so just to point out over here, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Yochai, and Rabbi were contemporaries. They were contemporaries. So the Rebbeim were Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Now again, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is the father of Rabbi. So he was like the ranking sage. Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha. So the two Rebbeim are sitting on the benches, and the two Talmidim, Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi, are sitting on the floor. So the Gemara says, Makshu u'mefarku amri. So we'll say, what would happen? So the Rebbeim would pose questions, and the students would answer all the questions. Amri. So this is interesting. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha said, the students are literally greater than us. We're drinking from their waters in Torah, and we're sitting on the benches, they're sitting on the floor. Abdullah Safsali. So they put Rabbi and Rabbi Lazar on benches. Askin, so the Gemara says, Abdullah Safsali Askinu. Amr lahen Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Pray the achas yeshli beinechem va'atem evakshim la'avda. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, I have one jewel, I have one son. Literally again, like one preda, one donkey, right? One dove, right? I have one animal, my son, and you're looking to go and take him away. In other words, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel was afraid of the ayin hara. What he was afraid of was like this: his son, Rabbi was very young, and to start elevating him with such prominence, he felt it wasn't the right thing. So therefore, he says. So the Gemara says, "Achsu al Rabbi." So ultimately, they put Rabbi back on the floor. Right? They put him back on the floor again, just to say, at his father's request. Amr lahen Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha. Mishi yesh lo av yichya, misha ein lo av yamos. So because somebody has a father, he should live. Somebody doesn't have a father, he should die. In other words, remember saying, so Rabbi was put on the bench, then was taken down because his father, Shimon Gamliel, said, I don't want my son to have an ayin hara. Rabbi Lazar at this point in time didn't have a father. His father, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, was just to understand these families. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Rabbi Lazar. This is incredible. So now what happened? So Rabbi Yeshua said, somebody's looking out for young Rabbi Yehuda, for young Rabbi. Who's looking out to save him from the ayin hara for Rabbi Lazar? So therefore again, achsu nam Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. So they put Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon back on the floor. Put him back on the floor. Chalash daite. Now I will say, Rabbi Lazar took this very personally. He took it personally because, he didn't ask to be put back on the floor. It's not like his father asked, his father was dead, his father asked to be put back on the floor. See, he was offended. Chalash daite means he was upset. He was upset that here he was elevated, and now he was, so to speak, demoted. Amar kachashivtu le kavasi. Now I will say, he said, people think I'm just like Rebbe. Now Rabbi Lazar already knew about himself that he was greater in Torah than Rebbe. But he sees that they're being treated the same way, and he didn't think that was right. So the Gemara says, Adahu Yoma ki hava amar Rabbi Milsa Masayile Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon. Before that time, when Rabbi would advance an idea, Rabbi Lazar would go ahead and support it. He would bolster it. From that point on, whenever Rabbi would say, I have an answer, or I have a refutation, Amarli Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Kach v'kach yesh lecha lahashiv. I know what your questions are. Zohi tshuvaseich, and this is the answer. Hashka hekvisanu chuvos chavilos she'in bahen mamish. And Rebbe, all you're doing is you're asking a whole bunch of questions, you're loading up a whole bunch of bundles of questions, and there's no point to all your questions. So what's happening over here is that essentially Rabbi Lazar felt that he had to distinguish himself. He felt that he's being treated on the same level as Rebbe, and now he felt he had to distinguish himself from Rebbe. So he was demonstrating his elevated acumen, his elevated scholarship over Rebbe. So the Gemara said as follows: so what happened? Chalash daite de Rebbe. Now Rebbe's offended. No, Rebbe sent it. Now, both sides. Now, again, there is, in life, there is everything, right? There's always a healthy competition. Healthy competition is good. Healthy competition fuels excellence. In the Beis Medrash, there's also a healthy competition about who is going to be the greatest Talmid Chacham. This healthy competition goes ahead and breeds excellence, right? When there's no competition, when everyone gets the trophy and everyone is a winner, while you think you're making everyone good, you're also totally lowering the standard and saying that mediocrity is an absolutely noble goal. So I'll say what's happening over here is Rebbe felt, right? Rebbe was in the pursuit of excellence of Torah. And he felt now that he's being relegated to the same, Rebbe Elazar is in the pursuit of the excellence of Torah. He thinks now that he's being relegated to the same status as Rebbe. And as such, he feels the need to distinguish himself. Now Rebbe feels upset because Rebbe feels that ultimately, again, he's like being second fiddle to Rebbe Elazar. So I'll say, so what happens? Amar le lavua. So Rebbe shares his concerns with his father. So his father says, Amar le b'ni, ayer lecha, don't be upset. Shuhu Ari ben Ari, va'ata Ari ben Shual. So he says, don't, my son, it's not you, it's me. See, Rebbe Elazar is a lion, the son of a lion. It's incredible to say. He's a lion, Rebbe Elazar is a lion, and his father, Rishon bar Yochai, is a lion. That is a family of exceptional Torah scholarship. That is a family of exceptional Torah accomplishment. You, my son, Rebbe, you're incredible. I just want to point out, this is Rebbe Huda Nasi, right, the organizer of the Mishnah. So he says, you, my son, it's not you, you're a lion. The problem is not you, I'm a fox. This is Rabbi Shmuel Gamliel. Rabbi Shmuel Gamliel says, you don't come armed with the same zochos alus, with the same benefit of your paternity, right? So you're a lion, but unfortunately, me, your father, I'm only a fox. V'hainu damra Rebbe Shlosha and the son in Hain. There were three humble people. The Eluhain, and these are the humble people. Abba, my father. Rav Saba said, this is Rebbe making this statement. So my father, Shimon Leal, right, top of Pehe, 85a, B'nei Beseira, the sons of Beseira, which we'll talk about in just a second. For Yonasan ben Shaul, and Yonasan, the son of Shaul. Yonasan, the son of Shaul. So Rabbi says, so by the way, I just want to point out how incredible this is. Rebbe says, there are three humble people. Really? That's it? Like, in the history of Klal Yisrael, there's three humble people? I would say, yeah, because true humility is almost non-existent. True humility. Now, what's interesting is that Moshe Rabbeinu is missing from this list, which is interesting. Okay, there's a lot to talk about, but we'll leave it on the side. The Gemara says as follows. Rabbi Shmuel Leah Hadamran. So we'll say that's Rabbi Shmuel Leah. We'll say, if you don't know where we are, we're on Pei Hey Amud Aleph, 85a, the second line down. We'll say, go with it, right? This is not. We got this. This is the third cycle we're doing this, right? I guarantee, I haven't listened to the last time's recording, but I guarantee you last year's recording is also probably way behind. And Baruch Hashem, we still finish Shas. The Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel Gamliel, we said before. Right, that's what we spoke about beforehand, that his humility is that he referred to himself as a fox. B'nei Beseira, Da'amar Mar, Hoshivuhu Barosh, Uminul L'Nasirim. So we're not going into this story, but it is an incredible story, which is that B'nei Beseira were the heads of the Jewish people. A halachic shaila came up about Karban Pesach. They did not know the answer. Hillel knew the answer. They abdicated their position of authority and made Hillel the Nasi. Right? Made Hillel the head of the Jewish people. So I'll say an incredible display of humility. Yonasan ben Shaul. So I'll say, Yonasan, this is the son of Shaul, the best friend of David HaMelech. To come and David, V'ata timloch al Yisrael, v'ani eyeh l'chol mishneh. So I'll say, Yonasan realizing that David was the true heir to the throne, says to David, you be the king, and I will be your faithful second in command. Tremendous humility. So one says, maybe Yonasan wasn't humble. Maybe he was just what? Strategic. And he saw that the people had left Shaul and had aligned themselves with David. Maybe that's why he went ahead and kind of hitched his wagon to David. And even B'nei Beseira, maybe it's not humility. They will say maybe it's just being strategic. Like when you recognize that at the end of the day, you're not as popular, you're not as powerful as you once were, hitch your wagon to the people who are, and hopefully maintain some semblance of authority that way, or standing that way. So, okay, you're right. Maybe these people had ulterior motives. But one thing is clear, Rabbi Shmuel Gamliel didn't have ulterior motives. He didn't have to call himself the fox. And the fact that he did so was a clear display of humility. Amar Rabbi says, Chavivin Yisurin. Sorry, Amar Rabbi, Chavivin Yisurin. Rabbi says ultimately again, suffering are chaviv. Now what does it mean that suffering are desired, or suffering is good, or suffering is beautiful? The idea I is that Yisurin have the profound ability to remove sin from the individual. So the Gemara says, Kibal alei tleisar shnei. So we'll say Rabbi accepted upon himself 13 years of suffering. So the Gemara says, so shis bitzamirta v'sheva bitzafarna. 6 years with samirta. And I will say, Rashi says over here, Rashi says, samirta, Rashi says, even shebemakom kitanim. So I will say, this is quite intense. This is a stone in the urinary tract. A stone in the urinary tract. Yeah. So 6 years he accepted that upon him. V'sheva b'tzafarna. Tzafarna, Rashi says over here, is choli shebesoch hapeh. Some type of illness inside of the mouth. Something type of the mouth. Okay. Others say, okay, you reverse the numbers. So we'll say, so now what happens? So now Rebbe accepted upon himself this suffering. Now we'll say, now again, we're going to see there's two elements to Rebbe's suffering. There's the suffering as a removal for his personal sin, and also his suffering as a schus for Klal Yisrael. So watch this. The Gemara says as follows: Ahurayre debe Rebbe hava atre mishavar malka. So we'll say the Ahurayre is the guy, the Shomer Susin. Rashi says the guy who watched Rebbe's horses. Now Rebbe was very wealthy. He was very wealthy. So the Gemara says Rebbe's horse guy, right? I don't know what you call whatever the horse guy, right? The horse guy, right? The horse guy ultimately was wealthier than King Shapur. Now that's probably a bit hyperbolic as well, because King Shapur was the king of Persia, right? But he was wealthier than the king of Persia. Why? So the Gemara says, they both say now the reason Rashi points out the reason he was so wealthy was because as the horse guy, he got to keep the manure. So because Rebbe had so many horses, he was a manure wholesaler. So apparently that's a good business because everybody needs manure, right? Everybody needs fertilizer. See, he was incredibly wealthy. So the Gemara says, not that really seems to have to do with the story all that much, just an interesting fact. So the Gemara says, Kat havarami kista lechayusa, when he would feed the animals, hava azul kalabatlasa mili. So I'll say, so again, Rebbe had so many animals that when he would feed the animals, the sound of the animals eating would go ahead and spread for 3 mil. That's how loud it was. So it says incredible. Rebbe, when he would have to relieve himself, when he would have to urinate, would be in excruciating pain because of his stones. He would scream when he had to urinate. He would scream. So listen to this. The horse guy, out of deference to Rebbe, didn't want Rebbe's screams to be heard. So what did he do? He timed the feeding of the animal to coincide with the time that Rebbe would have to relieve himself. That way, again, kind of the sounds of the animal would drown out Rebbe's screams. So and despite that, Rebbe's screams could still be heard above the screams of the animal. It's incredible. And ultimately, again, even the sailors, right, even the people on the boats would hear Rebbe's screams. Obviously, I will say a bit hyperbolic as well. The point over here is that Rebbe was in excruciating pain. So I'll say, but even so, the suffering of Rabbi Lazar was greater than the suffering of Rebbe. So I'll say, sir, remember again, I just want to point out, you see already from the time that they were young, right, these two were like, there was a rivalry. There was a rivalry, right? They were peers, right? They were both on the floor of the Beis Medrash together, and they both grew up into great men. So the Gemara is comparing them kind of every step of their lives, that the suffering of Rabbi Lazar was greater than Rebbe. How so? We'll say the suffering of Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon was considered to be Yisur Me'ava. Suffering that is a demonstration of love from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe al yidei ma'asavo v'ayidei ma'asaholchu. So ultimately, again, the suffering of Rebbe, interestingly enough, the Gemara says, came about because of a particular episode, and ultimately, again, were removed from him because of a particular episode. So ayidei ma'asavo, what's the episode that brought about the suffering of Rebbe? So the Gemara says, Mahi dahu egla dahava kame matulei l'shachte l'shchita. There was a particular calf that was being led to slaughter. Azul Taya L'Reishe Bekanfei de Rebbe. Suppose that this is incredible. So the young calf is being led out to slaughter, and it breaks free, it runs away, and it hid in the cloak of Rebbe. Like it came to Rebbe to save it, so to speak. V'kabachi, and the calf was crying. Amar le zil lekach notzarta. Rebbe wasn't compassionate, and he said to the calf, Go and be slaughtered. This is why you were created. Amar hoyel v'lo kamarached leisra le'yisurin. So as they said in Shemayim, because Rebbe has no rachmanis, because he has no compassion even on an animal, therefore again we will visit suffering upon him. Now you'll say to yourself, wow, that seems like pretty severe. So remember again, first of all, Tamidi Chachamim, right? The greater you are, the more precision, right? The greater your accountability. But remember, as we're going to see over here, Rebbe had the incredible opportunity to make a Kiddush Hashem and to show that the Ribono Shel Olam's compassion is upon everything. And our job in life is divine emulation, and therefore our compassion should be upon everything, animals, people, everything. So as a result of an episode, Rebbe was saved from his suffering. One day, Rebbe's maid was sweeping up the house. So what happened? Shajia b'nei karkushta, or karkushta v'kakanshalahu. So there was a family of weasels that apparently made their home inside Rebbe's house, and the maid was sweeping away the nest and sweeping them out of the house. Amrullah, so Rebbe said to the maidservant, Shafkinu, leave the weasels alone. Ksiv v'racham ala kol ma'asav. Pasuk says that the Ribono Shel Olam's compassion is upon all of his creations. So it's interesting how Rebbe's suffering came as a result of a lack of compassion on animals, and ultimately, again, were removed when he exhibited compassion upon animals. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Amrav good. Shnei Yisurei Rabbi Lazar. Shnei Yisurei Rabbi Lazar lo shachav inish below zmanei. Kulu Shnei Yisurei Rabbi lo itzrich amal mitra. So we'll say now the Gemara talks about the idea that the suffering of these great men allowed for bracha. It's almost like to a certain degree, not that they absorbed some level of responsibility for the generation through their suffering. So all the years that Rabbi Lazar suffered, no one died prematurely. And all the days of that Rebbe suffered, ultimately again, the world did not need rain, yet the soil still produced its full bounty. So as Rabbi Chana said, as much as rain is a bracha, rain is very difficult. Why is rain difficult? Because rain makes travel difficult, right? Rain messes it with the roads up. So rain is difficult. So if the world didn't need rain that badly, the Rabbanim would daven that there should be no rain in the world. That's how disruptive it is. So even though Rabbi say, listen to this, all the years that Rebbe was suffering, it didn't rain. But even though it didn't rain, this is incredible. Even though it didn't rain all the years of Rebbe, when you would pull a radish out of the ground, the hole would fill with water. In other words, the ground was saturated with so much moisture, even though it didn't rain, and this was attributed to the bracha that the world endured because of Rebbe's suffering. Ikla Rebbe la'asrei Devorah Leah Rishimon. So it's an incredible Gemara. So now I'll say, again, the Gemara just taking us in the course of a few lines from like the childhood of Rebbe and Rabbi Lazar to now their adult lives, and now we'll say, watch this. Rabbi Lazar passed away. Right? So we saw before the Gemara, Rabbi Lazar passed away. So Atla Rebbe la'asid Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. So Rebbe went to the city of Rabbi Shimon. Amarlei yesh lo bein la'osat tzadik. Did Rabbi Lazar leave behind a son? Did he leave behind a son? Amrulo, they said to him, yesh lo bein. Yeah, he has a son. V'chol zona sheniskeres b'shnayim sochrasal b'shmona. Let's say this son, unfortunately, has fallen into a life of ill repute, and he's so handsome, he's so attractive that even the highest paid prostitute, right, pays money to be with this boy. That's how popular, that's how handsome he is. I want to point out, this is Rabbi Lazar's son, right? This is the Einikel, right? This is the grandson of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So now, so Rebbe is searching out. So what happens? So the Gemara says, Asye asmechei beRebbe. V'ashalme l'Rabbi Shimon ben Isi ben Lakunya achos di'imei. So I say, so what happened? So Rebbe meets this boy, and what does he do? He gives him smicha. He gives him smicha, right? And ultimately, then afterwards, he goes ahead and he hands him over, right, to the care of Rabbi Shimon ben Isi, this, right, the son of Lakunya, Shimon, son of Isi, son of Lakunya, who was ultimately his uncle, who was the boy's uncle. So I just want to point out, what does that mean he gave him smicha? Like, again, I just want to point out, just so you understand, the fact that Rebbe had to ask, does Rabbi Elazar have a son? So what does that show you? What does that show you? No one knew of this boy, right? No one knew of this boy, which clearly means that he did not carve out for himself a Torah identity. Rebbe's meeting him for the first time after he's living a life of like debauchery, right? Clearly. And what does Rebbe do? Shalom Aleichem, right? I hereby give you smicha. It's a joke. It's a joke. So perhaps the Gemara is saying is like this. Sometimes the only way to go ahead and get people to believe in themselves is to show them how much you believe in them. So Rebbe comes and he finds this kid, and he says to this kid, you know what? You could be great in your Torah. You could be great. What is the kid going to say to him? What is he going to say to him? Get out of here. What are you talking about? You see who I am? Right? Do you see the life that I'm leading? Right? Do you see what I'm doing? So what does Rebbe do? How does Rebbe get this boy to believe in himself? And the answer is, give him smicha. Rebbe says, I'm giving you smicha now. Now the smicha right now, I'm giving you smicha now. Why? Because right now, the title is hollow, but it's yours. But I believe that one day, you will grow into this identity, and you will become worthy of this identity. I will say, it's such a tremendous yesod. If you want, sometimes people are just able to believe in themselves, but many times in life, people are so down on themselves that they can't believe in themselves. If you show them in a tangible way how much you believe in them, that often gives people the koach to continue or to begin to believe in themselves. Such an incredible Gemara. So I'll say, so what happened? Kol yom hava amrin l'kiryasi ana ezel. So I'll say, so what happens? So Rabbi Shimon ben Isi is tutoring this boy, is helping him grow into his smicha. So every day the boy says, you know what, I want to go home. The base medrash is great, right? But like I had a pretty good life back home. I think I'd like to go home. So the Gemara says, Amar le chachim avdu yasach, the gulsa dedava parsu alach, the Rebbe karulach, va'at amrid lekiryasi ana azil. So Rabbi Shimon ben Isi says to the boy, one day we're going to make you into a Talmud Chacham, and you're going to wear a gold cloak, and you're going to go ahead. The people are going to call you Rebbe. And you want to go home. So we'll say, so it's incredible. It's not appealing to his spiritual side, right? It's appealing to his ego. And the same idea, we'll say, you have to know how to build people up and what's going to speak to them. So again, that's not the goal of becoming a Talmud Chacham, that someone's going to call you Rebbe, you're going to wear a gold cloak, you're going to get covered. But he understood for this boy who was just entrenched in such a hedonistic lifestyle, to sell him on the spiritual benefits of Yiddishkeit was not going to work. But to sell him on the physical aspects, to sell him on the ego aspects, to sell him on the pleasure aspects, that absolutely could work. Shalom lishma ba lishma. So the Gemara goes right there. So the Gemara says, Amar lei mumi azavu ada. So the boy was taken by this, and he said, I swear, I'm not going to bring up going home again. So ki gadol. So we'll say, so what happened? When the boy grew up, so ase Yasiv b'mesifta the Rebbe. So we'll say, so what happened? So now incredible things happened. The boy progressed, and he was in the yeshiva of Rebbe. So that Shamei Lakale, Rebbe heard his voice. Amar ha kala dami lakala de Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. So Rebbe was saying, this is incredible. Rebbe hears a voice, and he says, that voice sounds like the voice of my friend, my childhood friend, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Amar lei berehu. The young man comes up and he says, I am his son. I say, what an amazing story. It doesn't matter where you start. It just matters where you're going and what you're willing to do to get there. Look where this boy started. I will say, literally again, in the pit of immorality. And now Baruch Hashem, he has reclaimed his family's place in the base of Medrash. Kari alei, pri tzadik eitz chaim, v'lokeach nefashos chacham. Pri tzadik eitz chaim. So we'll say, now literally again, the fruit of the tzadik is an everlasting life. Zeh, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. Both say, by the way, who's the boy? The boy is Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, who is mentioned so many times throughout Shas. I will say, where did Rabbi Yossi start? Rabbi Yossi started keeping company with prostitutes. That's where he started. That's where he started. Where did he end? He ended on the pages of Gemara. Because if you put your mind to something and you're willing to work hard, you're not looking for any life hacks or shortcuts, but you're willing to put in the work and roll up your sleeves, there is no telling what you can accomplish in life. Absolutely incredible. So the Gemara says, so Pri Tzadik Eitz Chaim, so I will say, Rabbi Yossi continues the chain. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, V'lokeach nafshos chacham, zeh Rabbi Shimon ben Isi ben Lakunya. And who takes the nefesh of the chacham, that's the uncle, that's Rabbi Shimon ben Isi. Because Rabbi Shimon ben Isi was responsible for taking his nephew and ultimately cultivating him. Alright, what's incredible? Kinach nafshei. So Rabbi Yossi dies. Okay, obviously fast forwarding a little bit. Right, Rabbi Yossi dies. So where do they want to bury Rabbi Yossi? The Gemara says, Amtua lema'arta da'avua. They brought him to the burial cave. They brought him to Meron. Right? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is there. Rabbi Lazar is there. Now they want to bring him to the cave. Hava hajle achna lema'arta. So what's by the cave? The serpent. The snake is there. So Amrle achna pasach picha. Ikanes ben eitzel aviv. Snake, serpent, open your mouth and let the son come to the father. Lo paschal. I will say this time the serpent would not open its mouth. Would not allow them entering into the cave. So people thought, it must be that I guess Rabbi Yossi is not as great as his father or his grandfather. The Gemara says, I will say it wasn't a function of greatness. Rabbi Yossi, from a Torah perspective, may have been as great. I will say, who was buried in the cave? Who was buried in the cave? The only people buried in the cave were the people who lived in the cave. In other words, I want to point out, the cave where Rashbi and Rabbi Lazar were buried was not the cave in which they hid in from the Romans. That cave is actually, they say, it's a little bit further up by Katzrin. I'll say, but the idea is that entering into the cave required going through hardships in life. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Lazar, his son, they lived in the cave for all of those years. Those who suffered in the cave are buried in the cave. Rabbi Yossi didn't have that experience of hardship, and as such, Rabbi Yossi was not permitted entry into the cave. Ikla, Rabbi La, so I will say, that's the end of Rabbi Yossi's story. Incredible. Ikla, Rabbi La Asrei de Tarfon. Rabbi went to the city of Rabbi Tarfon. Amar Lahu, Yeshlo ben la Osa Tzadik. So he said, does Rabbi Tarfon leave behind the son? Shehu mikapeach es banav. Okay, so I said that's the whole thing. Rabbi Tarfon, when he would swear, the way he would swear was, essentially, I swear by the life of my children. So which is not a good way to swear. So Rabbi said, Rabbi Tarfon died. Did Rabbi Tarfon leave behind the son? Amar Lo ben ein lo, he doesn't have a son, but ben bas yeshlo, he has a grandson. V'chalzona sheniskeres b'shnayim sochrasal b'shmona. So we'll say same thing as Rabbi Lazar's son. So we'll say it's interesting how the sons, in this case the grandsons of these great people, fell into lives of such profound immorality, which I will say to a certain degree it makes a little bit of sense. So first of all, in general, it's very hard to be the son of a great person because the expectations that are set are so high and the pressure that is set is so incredibly high. But also I will say where there is profound kedusha, there's also the capacity for profound tumah. So it's not an accident that in these homes where there was incredible kedusha, their offspring also often fell, their offspring sometimes fell, these two stories, into incredible decadence. So what happened? Same thing. He's fell into this life of immorality. Asur kameh. So they brought the boy before Rabbi. So Amar Lei, ihadrus b'cha yavina lecha barsoi. So this is interesting. So in this case, Rabbi promised him a shidduch. Rabbi said, if you come back with me, I'll give you my daughter in marriage. Hadrabe. So both say the boy came back. Ikeda Amri nasba v'girsha. Some say he married Rabbi's daughter and he subsequently divorced her. Ikeda Amri lo nasba klal kedei shelo yomru b'shvil zeh chazer. Others say at the end of the day, he didn't marry her at all, because once he came back on the right derech, he didn't want people saying that he only came back in for the marriage proposal. Why was Rebbe doing this? So we'll say, Rebbe seems to have been preoccupied with finding the children of great people who no one knew about, and somehow bringing them back to Yiddishkeit. Why was this his life mission? Kalamalamed es ben chavero Torah, zoche v'yoshev b'yeshiva shalmayla. We'll say, do you know why? Do you know what gains you entry into Yeshiva Shamayim, to the celestial yeshiva? Not your own Torah, but teaching someone else's child Torah. Taking your Torah and sharing it with others. And again, in this case, Rebbe took it literally Ben Chavero, right? Ben Chavero, the son of his friend. These were his colleagues, rabbinic colleagues. Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Lazar. If you go ahead and you teach your friend's child Torah, ultimately, again, that's entry into Yeshiva Shalmai. L'shnei Amar, Im Tashav Ashivcha Lefanai Tamod. V'chala Melamed Es Ben Am HaOretz Torah, Afilu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Gozer Gzeira Mevatla Bishvilo. And I will say, if you teach the son of an Am HaOretz Torah, then ultimately, again, even if Hashem has made a negative decree, He will go ahead and rip it up because of you. Because I will say, remember again, often the son of an Am HaOretz is almost like condemned to a life of ignorance. So if you pluck that child out of a life of ignorance and you give him Torah, that's even a greater accomplishment. I will say, what do you begin to see? That our greatest accomplishments in life are not the things we do for ourselves, but it's the things that we do for others. So your greatest accomplishment is not how many times you finish Shas, but it's ultimately, again, how you take the Torah that you learned and somehow use it for others. So Ben Chavero is one example of this. Your friend's child is one, but it doesn't just have to be your friend's child. It could be your friends. It could be your family. Take your Torah, and do something with it. This is incredible Gemara. I will say any generation in which you have 3 generations of Talmidei Chachamim. So a grandfather, a father, a grandson. If you have 3 generations, so the Gemara says, Shuv ein Torah posekes mizaro. There is a guarantee. Torah will not leave this family. 3. It's almost like I will say. It's almost like what have you established? Like a chazaka. Once the family establishes a chazaka, a grandfather, a father, a son, that they have Torah will not leave that family. The Gemara says, so Torah in Torah pasek mizar liolam. Shnei amar va'ani zos brisi lo yamush mipicha u'mipi zaracha u'mipi zera zaracha amar Hashem me'atav yad olam. Fine. My amar Hashem. What does it mean amar Hashem? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu ani oriv lecha b'davar zeh. I am like the guarantor that if there are 3 generations of Torah scholarship within a family, that Torah will not leave this family. My me'atav yad olam. What does that mean from now and forever? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah mikan ve'eluch Torah machzeras alachsanya shalah. After 3 generations, grandfather, father, son of Talmidei Chachamim, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Torah will always revisit its host. So I just want to tell you in the minute that we have left, I will say, the Kotzker notices something very interesting, right? If you notice, there's almost like 2 different statements here. The first statement is that when you have 3 generations of Talmidei Chachamim, so ain't Torah posekes mizaro. Torah never leaves the offspring. Then Rabbi Yirmiyah says, after 3 generations of Talmidei Chachamim, ultimately, Torah machzeres alachsanya. Torah always comes back to its host. So the Kotzker says, why does Rabbi Yirmiyah pivot? Right? The Gemara already said it. Once you have 3 generations of Talmidei Chachamim, that's it, you're done. That's it, right? Torah will always. And then Rabbi Yirmiyah says, no. It's almost like he disagrees with this, and he says, Torah always comes back to its host. So the Kotzker says something amazing. Rabbi Yirmiyah was very aware of a dynamic, I will say, which is, this statement doesn't seem to be true. There are plenty of families in Klal Yisrael that had 3 generations of Torah scholarship, and then the 4th generation had nothing. And the 5th generation, in other words, we see this. We see this with our eyes all of the time, of great families, excellent families in Torah, and yet Torah does not stay with the family for all generations. The Kotzker says something amazing. This is what Rabbi Yirmiyah is coming to highlight. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, the Kotzker says, Kasha l'davanenu anu roim, harbe ma'od mekarim, shlosha doros Talmidei Chachamim, uvechozos nifsekes haTorah me'ador shel achreim. We see many examples of families where there are 3 generations of Torah, and yet then Torah leaves the family. Ella, listen to this. Ella ina omer Torah chozeres, ella Torah machzeres alachsanya shalah, misoveves u'michapeses derech, eich likanes shuv l'tzetzaya hadara kodem. Now, Rabbi Yirmiyah says like this, something absolutely amazing. If there are 3 generations of Torah, what you have done with 3 generations of Torah is Torah is a part of your family. After that, even if you have offspring who leave chas v'shalom, what happens? Torah machzeres alachsanya shalah. Torah itself will look for ways to come back into your family. See, even if your family chas v'shalom leaves Torah, because you've established 3 generations of Devekos Torah, Torah will look for a way back into your family. Torah will look for you, even if you are not looking for Torah. I will say is that when you make Torah a multi-generational priority for your family, all you need to do is establish 3 generations of Torah in your family. And if that happens, Torah will find a way to be part of your family in future generations, even if future generations chas v'shalom leave. Torah machzeres alachsanya shalah. I will say, do you understand what this means? As parents, understand this means? I will say, number 1, we have to become Talmidei Chachamim. We have to become Talmidei Chachamim. You'll say, come on, that's not me. It is you. It is you. Work hard. Work hard. Talmidei Chacham doesn't mean you don't have to be the Gadol Hador. You don't have to be the Gadol Hador. Talmidei Chacham just means I learn, and what I learn, I take seriously. What I learn, I try to understand to the best of my ability, and I devote time, I makdish time, and nothing's going to take it away from me. That's number 1. Number 2, I will say, we have to raise children who are Talmidei Chachamim. And I will say, they are not going to become Talmidei Chachamim on Netflix, on iPads, on everything else. Again, you can have iPads for the right thing. Let's say, we have to raise children on Talmidei Chachamim. That is our sacred task. We have to do that. We have to do that, and we have to make sure that we have homes that are capable of raising children who are Talmidei Chachamim. What do our children see us focusing on? What do our children see place priority on? What do our children see that's important to us? We have to create lifestyles that create children who are Talmidei Chachamim. And then, when they get married and they create lives on their own, we're still not done. We have to create grandchildren who are Talmidei Chachamim. Granted, again, that's not fully within our power. That's a little bit up to our kids. Right? But l'maisa, we have to set the tone for that, Rabbosa, because if I could just get 3 generations, and 3 generations, like in the continuum of Klal Yisrael, it's not a lot. If I can get just 3 generations of people who love and are committed to Torah, then I've locked in a lasting legacy for my family. Whatever happens, whatever direction my family goes in, Torah will always find its way back in. That's our task. 3 generations. Me, my children, my grandchildren, or if a person's lucky, maybe their father was already generation number 1, or their grandfather was already generation number 2, maybe your 3rd generation. Wherever you are on the chain, do your part. Because if we each do our part, we lock in a lasting legacy for our family, and then whatever twists and turns our family takes in future generations, Torah will always find a way back into our ranks. All right, let's stop over here for today. Shkoyach. All right, everyone, Zoom, have a great day, everyone.